Welcome to the May 13th, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting. And I am happy to say that all members are present. And we have a fifth member after a couple of months without one. Welcome to Joe Marie O'Mahony.
Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to Mr. Bendel. We're back.
Likewise, Mr. Kara.
Thank you. Thank you. We had an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategies with respect to collective bargaining with the New England Police Benevolent Association Local 101 in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, as an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town, and to approve executive session minutes from April 22nd, 2019, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 22. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll start with the transmitting of Treasury warrants 43, 43A, 44, and 44A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bendel, second by Mr. Eaton. Any discussion? All in favor? And it's unanimous. We have minutes to approve, and the first one we'll take them individually, is a Board of Selectmen meeting of March 25th, 2019. Do I have a motion? Anybody?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bendel, second by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion, any errors, omissions, or that need to be addressed in this? No? Looks good. All in favor? Am I missing something? All in favor? Okay, we have 3, 4, and 2 abstain.
Thank you.
We have minutes of April 8th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Eaton, second by Mr. Bendel. Any discussion? Errors, omissions, corrections? Anything good? No? All in favor? And that's 4 with 1 abstention. Thank you. And we're at appointments. And our first appointment is with Matthew Raymond, President of MSR Utility Maintenance Corp. And this is a public hearing. Are you here? Yeah. Okay. Do you want them to?
You can take a seat at the table there, if you would.
And this is in regards to locating a pole on Salem Street and 1 pole on Anthony Ave.
So if you could just explain to us what it is you're seeking to do and time frame and.
This is for National Grid on the gas end. This is a cathodic protection system to protect roughly about 2 to 3 miles worth of pipe in that area. Initially, when we applied for the permit, we wanted to go underneath the road, but they paved the road. So the only way to do it now, we have to go overhead with the 2 poles and then come down to the underground.
Okay. So you're looking to put up telephone poles
Telephone poles.
to,
This is going to be for the rectifier system for the ground bed. So what we'd have to do, we would have to go overhead because we can't go underground, because they just paved the road, and we're not comfortable going underneath the road, not knowing how deep the sewer and the water is. That we would want to shoot something underneath the road and go through one of the utilities. So the safest way is doing it is go above.
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
yes.
So just to be clear, in terms of the location here, you're talking about 1 pole on Anthony Ave and 1 pole on Salem Street?
Correct.
And typically, in the past, when we've received similar requests, there has been a document that was provided for the board to sign. I know the administrative assistant had contacted someone from your office to inquire about the order or document that the board would have to sign. I don't know that she received a call back, so we just prepared what we customarily have seen for the board to sign. So I guess I would ask, is there a particular document that...
I didn't bring a document. I didn't know there was a document to bring.
Okay. I mean, I would suggest perhaps to the board that if this is approved, that the document that we customarily use for other requests for polls, for Reading Light and so on, be executed. If it's not needed, then so be it, but otherwise they'd have to come back and have it signed.
Right, I would think there'd be something that we would have to sign for permission, so for them to move forward. But I'm just trying to understand, now, this is for gas?
This is for the gas.
How does that work?
This is for the gas
You have a pole
line.
with wires on top for
What is
gas?
it? We take AC and turn it into DC current onto the gas main. Similar to describe it, you know how you have a hot water heater in your house?
Yeah.
And they use an anode inside there to prevent the tank from rotting out? This is the same system, but much bigger. So we'll put anode rods into the ground, drill them in, and then bring it up to a rectifier box and turn AC to direct current onto the gas pipe. Roughly about 1.6 volts on the gas pipe.
So it's cathodically protected.
So what this does is prevent from any gas leaks.
And is this the only side you can put the poles on? Because I know on the opposite side of Anthony Ave, isn't it just,
The gas main is in the sidewalk,
okay.
so I need to get into the sidewalk on Salem, and then I need to go on the opposite side to put the anodes in.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, thanks,
Mr.
Mr.
McCoy.
Chairman. Just want to ask a question. Maybe it's a ridiculous question. You're running gas line, correct?
No, we're not running gas line. We're running a CP system, a cathodic protection system for the pre-existing gas line that's been there.
All right, because, yeah, when you said the street was already hot-topped, and I guess there's what a rule, at 5 years, you can't
It's 5 years, it
dig
will
up the
get guaranteed
road.
for 5 years.
And so what you're saying is the gas line is at the property line? Are you going to be, how are you going to get the gas line to?
The gas
once
line is
again?
in the sidewalk that hasn't been paved.
Okay.
So it's paved, but it hasn't been newly paved.
All
So I
right.
can get the gas line in the sidewalk,
Okay.
bring it up to the pole, but to go across the street, there's only one way to go across the street now is to go above.
Well, that's the question. Maybe I'm asking a ridiculous question, but are you actually, you're tapping into the gas line, you're going above and over the street?
No, we're not tapping it. What we're doing, we're welding 2 wires onto the gas main,
All right.
and then we're gonna bring 2 wires going across the street to where we're gonna put the anode system.
Paul, did you have something to add?
Uh,
Paul Looney's our engineer. Good.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
doing this project,
Yeah.
probably a year when they first filed their street opening permit. So all it is it's a wire that, cable that transfers current from the gas main, steel gas main, and corrodes like sacrificial steel that's offset from the gas main. So there's no gas that's being tied into. It's
No,
just
there's no
a-
gas being tied
it's
in.
a low voltage
This is just cable work.
It's a low voltage cable and it's spanning across the street instead of going under. We don't want them drilling under Salem Street after we just invested all that money in paving. I looked at the pole location on Anthony Ave, and I also met with the resident that lives at the corner there too, and looked at there's like a grass strip in between the sidewalk and Anthony Ave. That's, I
And
think
we're gonna be flexible wherever you want us to put the pole.
it's a good, yeah, actually where you had it marked out in the field, I thought was a good location. And I thought the grass strip, and they show the right of way, it's all in the public way, so that was a good spot for these sacrificial steel rods.
Correct.
Yeah, and Mr. DeChecka was okay with that? You talked to him? You said-
I talked to, yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but I did explain
Right.
the project. He couldn't make it here tonight, but we've been corresponding through email as well. He was more
Is this
concerned.
Chris that you spoke to?
Correct.
Okay.
He was more concerned about where the public way was. So I brought the plan over to his house and showed him where the monuments were and where the right-of-way was, and I think that addressed his questions.
Yes, Mr. Bendel.
Through you, if I could. So I'm glad to hear that you're flexible in terms of the location, is that something through Paul's office you could work with the resident? I mean,
Sure.
it's the only house on the street, you know, so
Yes, I mean.
if he's gonna end up with a
I can
pole in his
go over
yard.
to him and walk his property and whatever, wherever he wants it over there, we can put it there.
I think that would be
I'm happy to do that.
reasonable, that'd be great, thank you.
That'd be good.
And Paul, do you have a recommendation on this?
Yeah, I do recommend
Approval.
approval.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any comment? Okay.
Okay.
No, this is a public.
All right,
this-
okay.
yeah.
Is there any butter in the
Yeah.
audience? Okay.
Oh, I'm getting there. Mr.
All right, no,
Clerk.
no, all right,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we're gonna go out to the public for question. And did I see a hand?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, you just state your name and address, please, for the record.
Rich Reedy, 221 Salem. So unfortunately, this is kind of the first I've been hearing about this. I own the property on the Salem side of the street. So I don't know where this pole's going, what effect it's gonna do.
This pole's going right next to the other pole. Right here, there's no houses. Over here, this just basically goes into the wetlands.
I know, but I own from that house all the way to the tracks.
Okay.
So when I got the letter, I didn't know what was happening. So
We'll be on town property. We're gonna be right next to the other telephone pole, right on the backside of the sidewalk.
You running anything down Anthony?
And then we're going down Anthony, which you can see, you have the first house here.
Mhm.
There's nothing beyond that?
Nothing past the driveway. It will be 100 feet past the driveway.
Were you picking up the power
It's gonna come over here,
off this transformer?
off this pole over here.
So let me ask you this, why couldn't you use the existing poles there?
On there, because National Grid, gas and electric is different. They can't use the same poles. So it'll be another pole right off that pole, and they'll get power off of that, and then it'll come across the street. And then go down below.
Yeah, I understand that process, so just seems kind of silly, two poles right next to each other, right?
I agree, but
If you guys, the same company, could make an agreement to use the same pole?
because,
It's not National Grid Electric. It's, I believe that pole is owned by Verizon, if I'm not mistaken. It may be Reading Municipal.
all the poles that you see, they're owned by different, just because you think it's electric companies, some are owned by Verizon.
I know.
It depends on the height of the pole, and some are owned by Grid, some are owned by,
I get that. So, but it's a fundamental question I need to ask, so.
Okay. Does-
So is it gonna be set next to this, at the same distance, because the poles that are existing right there at the edge of the,
it's gonna be the same distance, it's gonna be right on the edge, not going further back.
Did they mark this out last year?
They might have marked this out last year. I know we dig saved it last year, and then they ended up coming in and paving the road.
'Cause when they were doing that, we asked them what they were doing, and we were told, you're almost like none of your business.
because this actually, the way you've depicted this, my driveway's right there. It's all about 8 feet from that existing pole, roughly. Maybe 10.
Is your driveway, is it the pole impeding your driveway? Is that what you said?
No,
Oh,
it's not
okay.
impeding it, it's
Would it be a hazard if it was there for you to look to either side of for cars coming by?
you have to pull out a little bit to, when you're pulling out of the driveway, and you're gonna go either way. You gotta pull out a little bit to look past the existing one. So, it's also gonna look gaudy, two poles right next to each other.
How is that with the sight line? Is that taken into account for someone pulling out of a driveway? Do you take that
It'll be
into
the same
account
sight line as what you
safety-wise?
see there already, so it's not gonna be
Gas
We're gonna
line.
drop that
any,
I don't know.
any different than what you're looking at already.
Well,
I didn't notice any adverse, say, distance issues up there. I didn't stand at the property owner's driveway though and look either. I looked at it from like Anthony Ave, like facing it, and saw where the existing pole was. It's something that I'd be happy to take a look at as well, if the board wishes.
Okay.
I mean, with that one too, we're also flexible too, moving it on the opposite side or whatnot, you know, if you think that'll be better.
I'd have to do a site visit with you and
Yeah, we can go out anytime you want on a site visit.
How far down
Okay.
on Anthony is the pole?
Excuse me?
Pole on Anthony. Is that located?
Can I have your, sir, can I have your name and address for the record?
Right crossing 2 Captain Ave?
Did you get that? I believe he said how far down is the pole on Anthony Ave? I believe the director butter was okay with it, huh?
Oh, yes, see, yeah. So we'll be right over here.
Right on the corner.
Yeah, the common grass strip. Okay. Yep.
Okay, are there any other questions from the public?
So I'd like to, if these guys are gonna go out and survey it, I'd like to be the ones with them.
Okay. If you're gonna go out and survey or site survey to see if there's another location or a better location, or if that's the only one, the gentleman would like to be there when you do that.
Yeah, if
So-
you leave your information with us, yes, we'll give you a call.
Okay.
Can that be done this week?
yeah,
You tell me, I can be there anytime.
yeah, I can.
Okay. Yeah, if you leave your name and your email address, we'll all gonna meet out there.
I have your email. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak from the public? Okay, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Motion is made by Mr. Bendel. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCoy. Any discussion on closing of the public hearing? All in favor? It's unanimous. And now in regards to permitting the polls in those locations, I would suggest that we wait until our next meeting after there's been some collaboration between the town engineer and from National Grid and the gentleman who lives on Salem Street. I'm sorry, I don't have your name right off the top of my head.
Rich Reedy.
Mr. Reedy, and then we'll come back to the next meeting for a formal vote as to accepting where the location is. That works for everybody? Fine? Okay,
You want that in the form of a motion?
sure.
And also,
Go
if we
ahead.
could just include in that motion that we're gonna notify Mr. DeCecca, right, if he's the gentleman who lives on.
Yeah, you can notify
Chris.
Chris Checker as well when you go out with Mr. Reedy and Mr. Loney.
We might want to extend that to as many of these abutters that are on our
Sure.
notice as possible. I understand that that means that with the speed of mail, that would be a couple days out, but at the same time, I want to make sure that all the folks that are potentially affected by this have a chance to go out and have a discussion about this, so this is kind of done as open as possible. So I will make that in the form of a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Eaton, seconded by Mr. Bendel, that there'll be a site visit by the abutters, and that's optional. That doesn't mean the abutters have to go to it, but just a notification of when National Grid and town engineer will have that date set and the time. Notify the abutters that that's when you're going to be there, and if they're so inclined to be there, they can make it at that time.
So it's up to just a point, question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So the applicant would be responsible for dropping letters in mailboxes, is that or to properly notify the
Yes,
abutters? Okay.
yes.
Mr. Looney, I would suggest the residents that are who are here tonight, maybe get a couple dates and times for them and their contact information, and maybe make that so as many of them can make it as possible. And, okay. I appreciate you being here, and I understand we're giving you more homework, but...
No, it's okay. Sorry, I don't mind.
Okay, so we have that motion. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate your flexibility on this.
Mr. Chair, the next appointment is actually Mr. Looney, so we got some downtime. We might want to do some
I think he's given
communications.
his card to make that. Paul, do you want to give your card like you did, and then we can move on with the meeting, because you're next up. Unless they can wait 5 minutes, you're not going to be very long
Yeah, I'll wait 5 minutes,
in the presentation.
Sure.
And then you can talk, outside. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, our next appointment is with the town engineer, Paula Looney, to just brief us on some improvements on Yentile Farm recreational facility.
Thank you very much. A small construction project that's going to occur over the next couple weeks at Yentile Farm recreational facility in the vicinity of the turf field. We received feedback from residents that live across Main Street that soccer balls and lacrosse balls were frequently going into their yards. So we started to think of solutions to rectify the situation. First, we looked at it, could we extend the existing netting up higher in its current location, but unfortunately the diameter of the poles wasn't large enough to accommodate that additional height. Next, we looked at, well, what about relocating the existing pole back further and utilize some of, there's like a rolled berm or a hillside between Main Street and the field. So if we utilize that elevation and just relocate the existing net back, after I watched a soccer practice there looking to site the new net, and I saw that the net where it is serves a very valuable purpose in keeping residents safe that walk the walkway in between Main Street and the field. So third solution was to install a new net then behind the existing net that extended further out on the sides and extended higher up. Some things we considered, or we needed to consider in our evaluation for the design, was the state highway right-of-way, and there's also high voltage transmission lines that run along that side of the Main Street right-of-way as well. So we couldn't go too far back with the netting, and I didn't want to go too close to the walkway either, because that created kind of an awkward, for lack of a better word, like gauntlet almost in between the existing net and then another net on the other side of it. So we found a good spot that's about 20 feet off of or behind the field. The height of the new net will be 35 feet above field grade, and that puts that distance from Main Street if the worst case happens and the net were to, say, a pole were to shear off, it would be outside the travel lanes of Main Street as well. So we took that into consideration. So we're hoping to be done with this project before the end of May. And I think overall it's much needed and a good project for the park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Looney, for being here, and sounds like you've done your homework here, including scouting out a soccer practice, if I heard you correctly. Thank you for that. My question is regarding the cost. Could you talk to us about the estimated cost and where the money's going to come from?
Yes, the estimated cost is $54,000, and I believe it was from the Yentile account that's still open.
Right, just to clarify if I could, so we had money in the Yentile account of $44,729, and the balance of $9,271 will be taken from gift money, donations that have been made for the Yentile project.
So that will, Jeff, just to follow up, that will completely deplete that account, so there'll be nothing after that?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other question?
Have we talked to the youth programs about trying to get the kids to be a little bit more accurate? Maybe they can pony up some money instead of giving it to training that's clearly not working if they're still kicking it all the way over to Main Street. It's not a real question. It's my first comment. Should be a sarcastic one. Get everyone ready.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
after you put the new netting, if a football or soccer ball goes over, I think you need to give Belichick a call, you know? So, yeah, I'm sure he'd be looking for a kicker.
Yeah, and I know the committee had met with past several months over this issue because of the residents and the traffic that travels. So this was the solution, and thank you for doing all that work on behalf of the board and the town.
No problem.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated. Okay, you all set? Thank you.
Thanks.
Right on time, 7:30, and it's time for reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. As is a tradition, at this time after the town meeting, the board reorganizes with a new chair. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve as chairman for the past year. I want to thank my colleagues for allowing me to serve the town in this position. At this time, I would like to make a motion that Greg Bendel be chairman of the board for the next year.
Second that motion.
The motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, are you sure? You sure we want Greg? All in favor? And that's unanimous. You're going to vote? I hope. Yeah, and that's unanimous. Come on over.
Thank you,
Come on
Mr.
down from The Price is Right. You're going to switch, you're going to...
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Kara?
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Mr. Kara. Appreciate you and appreciate your service for the last year. I appreciate my colleagues' vote of confidence, and I'll promise to do the best I can for the residents and for my colleagues up here. So I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
All right, get right into it, Mr. Hull. Yeah, to communications.
So under communications, the first item is just a memo providing a status with respect to the high school gym floor. We have issued a invitation for bid for replacing the gym floor, which I'm sure comes as some surprise to many people. When the high school was constructed in 2015, you'll recall that it was actually opened in February of 15, and in the early summer months of 15, some of the folks, George Hooper in particular, Dennis Kelly, who worked for Public Buildings, identified that the floor panels in some locations were crimping, if you will, particularly in the center of the floor, in other locations as well. We were still continuing to have project meetings at the time with the design firm, Doran Whittier, the contractor, Gilbane Company, and inquired as to why this was occurring. And we were told at the time that it was the natural part of acclimation that wood, as I'm sure many people know, is really a living organism of sorts, and it shrinks and expands depending upon the climate in the particular area. It continued to maintain this unevenness, and it led us to pursuing it further with the contractor and the designers, and ultimately the recommendation was to bring in humidifiers or dehumidifiers, which public buildings did, and also fans to circulate the air, which seemed to have some measure of effect, but it really wasn't until the fall that the floor kind of settled back down. And that circumstance has continued now for the last few years. In the meantime, we've had multiple conversations with the designers and also the contractor about this particular circumstance. Clearly, you know, the townspeople paid for a gym floor that was going to function in the way it was intended to, and so it's our position that the floor needs to be replaced. The expectation is that we will be going to mediation with the contractor to resolve the replacement of this floor. So that's where we stand at this point. We did get the bids in for the work. There were actually 3 bids ranging from $219,200 up to $268,666. So, you know, the expectation is we would be looking to award to the lowest qualified bidder, subject to the process that we go through in terms of mediation. So we've been involved, had council, town council involved, and we're looking to mediate the matter.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say.
Sure.
No, there's no secret. We all could realize what was happening with that floor. And I would imagine that we're doing everything possible to take care of that situation. And, you know, I definitely feel that that contractor is absolutely responsible for this, and they really need to pay for it. And I know we're going to have to work that out down the road. So it should be loud and clear that we should not be paying any pennies for that thing at all. It was a flaw in the system, and it's the contractor's fault. Now they're trying to say it's not. Sad. Thank you.
All right, next under correspondence is a memo to the board about the finance director, town accountant position. As you know, we had advertised the position some time ago and set a deadline for applications. We had a couple of what the screening team believed were good candidates, and we're ready to present them to the board. One member, or one of the individuals that were amongst the two, works in a neighboring community and ultimately withdrew her application. As a consequence, we re-advertised in an effort to seek additional applicants. As has been noted many times previously, this is these finance positions, whether you're talking treasurer, collectors, assessors, accountants, there's a real struggle in the Commonwealth to get individuals who are qualified in these municipal finance positions. And I think the fact that we, just in terms of our recruitment efforts, the first go-round we had 11 applicants. Some of them, many of them didn't have any municipal experience whatsoever. This last round we had an additional 9. Just goes to show the challenges that we face with replacing some of these key positions. Nevertheless, we were able to identify 2 candidates who we believed had the appropriate experience, conducted screening interviews, and are comfortable at this point in recommending 2 candidates for the board to interview. The first candidate being Brian Perry, who is the city auditor for the city of Lowell. The second candidate being Jennifer Finnegan, who is currently the treasurer-collector in the town of Tingsboro. This information was provided to the board, and it is our recommendation at this point. In fact, we've scheduled meetings with the candidates so that the board will be interviewing the candidates on Wednesday, May 15th. The expectation is that you will meet with both candidates that evening, have an opportunity to speak with them personally and ask any questions you may have. It's my recommendation, and I think I speak for the screening committee, who is comprised of Jonathan Eaton, Mike Morris, and Kerry Coburn-Dion, that the board also, after you conclude your meeting on the 15th, that you have a special meeting next week to have discussion about the candidates and ultimately make an appointment contingent upon the final terms and conditions. As you know, Mike Morris is going to be retiring. His last day with the town is July 12th. He has agreed to provide some assistance on a limited basis thereafter, but clearly we want to have somebody on board as soon as possible, because being able to speak with him and transition is going to be key. Whichever candidate is selected, they're presumably going to have to provide at least 3, possibly 4 weeks notice to their existing employer. So that's the plan that we are presenting.
Mr. Chair, can I suggest that we look at the 20th or the 21st to meet for that additional meeting? Monday or Tuesday? That works with my colleagues' schedules.
I have a Strategic Advisory Planning Committee meeting at the library on Monday, but I can meet on Tuesday.
21st?
Yes.
21st works for me.
Can we do it a little bit later than 6:15? Is that okay?
Yeah,
That's fine.
Can we do
because
like
it's not
around
an
s-
interview, it's going to be a hire on the 21st. The
Yeah, I
interview
would
is the
imagine
15th.
No, I know that.
we would just
So
have.
we can do, yeah.
7
7
o'clock,
on,
would that be
yeah.
okay? 7 o'clock?
That's fine.
Is that
Fine
okay
with
instead
me,
of
yeah.
6:15, or even a little
Yeah.
later is fine, I don't,
Yep.
7 p.m.
7
Okay.
PM, sure.
Anybody else have a problem or conflict there? Or 7 p.m. on the 21st it is then?
Okay.
Good.
I do have an additional comment, if you don't.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I do want to stress the point that Mr. Hull has made, that as Mr. Morris is counting down the weeks left, that I do think it's imperative that we move as quickly as we can. So I'm glad that we're going to be interviewing this week and hopefully making an appointment next week. I was a part of the interviews. I have all the confidence in the world that the 2 finalists that we have are both very capable of the position of finance director. You'll recall that a few months ago we did restructure the position to be from town accountant to the finance director, town accountant, which within the organizational structure, the departments of treasurer collector and the assessor will now actually report to the finance director, town accountant. And I would recommend to my colleagues to reach out to Karen Rashes and Pamela McKenzie, as well as Beth Lalamond. I think I might be Lalamond. Yes. Just because my hope is not only that, because both of these individuals are highly qualified and have the skills on paper to do a fantastic job, but I want to make sure that the hire that we are making fits into the team as we have restructured it as best possible, so that we have a lot of professionals with a lot of experience in those 3 departments now, that I'm hoping that whoever we end up appointing can hit the ground running on day 1, and it's a smooth transition from Mr. Morris and his 3+ decades of service to whoever we appoint.
Thank you, Mr. Eden.
Okay, next under correspondence is a memo from Kerry Coburn-Dion with regard to a question that came up at the town meeting, the Metropolitan Air Pollution Control District. As you recall, there was a question raised about what it is and why we're paying it. There are a number of statutory charges that appear on the so-called cherry sheet, which is a document the town receives from the state each year, ranging from other assessments, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, for example, which we are a part of, including this. So by way of just a brief overview, these charges are essentially taken off of our local aid amounts. So we're not actually cutting a check, so to speak, when prior to us receiving the local aid from the state, the amounts for these various assessments are reduced from that amount. But specifically in terms of this Metropolitan Air Pollution Control District, MGL Chapter 111, Section 142B establishes these pollution control districts throughout the Commonwealth, communities across the state. And their intent is to establish rules and regulations and monitor air quality. And they have personnel that, if called upon, would be able to inspect the premises of particular businesses, perhaps that may be the source of any kind of air pollution contaminants. There are particular monitoring sites at various locations around the region. I believe the closest one to us is in Chelmsford. So our fee for the monitoring that goes on and is based upon both our population as a percentage of the population of the total district, as well as our total assessed value, the town's total assessed value as a percentage of the total assessed value of all the communities in the district. Apparently the town back in 1972, as we understand it, approved becoming part of this its air pollution control district. Next is a letter from Anna Marie Rotundo, a local coordinator for ARP Foundation. I'll just read this into the record. Mr. Hull, during the tax season that ran from February 5th to April 13th this year, 5 volunteers from ARP worked over 248 hours to complete 155 tax returns for seniors at the Bazell Senior Center. This was a wonderful result, as the changes to the tax law required much longer input times. Terry Marciello and her staff were invaluable in signing seniors up for each session and reminding them to come the day before their appointments. They provided a way for the seniors to have peace of mind that their taxes were done and that those eligible for the senior circuit breaker of $1,100 could file for it. For many, that money paid for the winter heating bill and medicines. The town of Wilmington has once again provided its most vulnerable citizens a wonderful service. Please thank the wonderful members of your staff, especially Terry Marciello, who made the tax season such a success for our seniors. Looking forward to a continued collaboration in years to come. Next is a letter from Frederick Lasky, who's the Executive Director of the MWRA, Metropolitan Water Resources Authority. You'll recall that we had or actually we didn't, but the MWRA had a water break in Stoneham, a fairly significant one, and this letter is basically extending the appreciation of Mr. Lasky and his agency for the efforts of Wilmington's Public Works and Water Division in terms of assisting the effort to control that water break. I would note that because of the fact that Wilmington has its own wells, we were able to weather the storm, so to speak, without any real impact. I was in touch with Mike Woods. Our water tanks remained at appropriate levels, and we were able to draw from our own sources.
Okay, we're on to Board to consider items.
First item under board to consider is the Economic Development Committee. So you'll recall that the board had expressed a desire to establish a committee, and the individuals who have been appointed to this committee to this point are Mr. Bendel, Selectman Bendel, Valerie Gingrich, Michael Shampoo, Nancy Valley, Patrick Giroux, Lilia Maselli, Robert Oliveri, Daniel Gibbons, Carol Boisvert, and Suzanne Sullivan. You also may recall that at one of the prior discussions, the board indicated a desire to give the incoming member of the board an opportunity to appoint a member to this committee also. So once the committee is fully established, the plan would be to get dates, send out some dates for possible meetings. I would be shooting for June, and once we can get a common date amongst members, then they would have their first meeting.
Okay, and how did you want to go about allowing our newest member to appoint somebody? You want to give her some time? Do you have somebody in
I
mind?
actually have someone in the audience tonight. I asked him to come.
Very well prepared.
Thank you. Well, he's very well prepared. I mean, I called the poor guy on Friday, and he's on the youth soccer board, so I do want to put a caveat in that now that I know that those soccer players can't control the balls off of Main Street at Yentile, I'm having some reservations, but I'd like to introduce you all to Tom Card. I met him through my husband on the youth soccer board, as well as he's a neighbor of one of my dear friends. Tom is a local business owner. How long have you lived in Wilmington now, Tom?
About 18 years.
18 years. He's the father of 5 children, so he wins. And prior to owning his own business, he was a business analyst. Sorry, it's later in the day. So I asked him to come because I didn't know if you wanted to hear from him directly as to why I think he'd be a good fit for this committee.
Good luck.
Welcome aboard.
Good luck.
So I guess we'll reach out to everyone. We want to make sure we have contact information, so perhaps after the meeting or maybe through Selectman O'Mahony, if you could just provide an email address and we can get some dates out to everybody and we'll get rolling.
Great.
I can provide this, Mr. Hull. I believe that Mr. Card needs to go Uber one of his children home shortly.
Okay.
Thanks for your willingness to volunteer.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion for us?
No, I think we're...
Nope.
All right, so the next under board to consider is the rink committee, finalizing the membership and the purpose for the rink committee. So here again, the committee has been in large part established. There are some remaining posts to be filled, if you will. The board had expressed a desire to have a designee serve on the rink committee. In addition, I had indicated a desire to have a representative from the finance departments on this committee. I would like to wait until the board finalizes the appointment of the finance director, although I don't think that should stop the process for meetings. I think I would expect that to happen in the next couple of weeks. And you'll also recall that we had reached out to the skating club, and in speaking with the representative from the skating club, I was advised that they really only have a couple of hours of ice time. They don't feel that they need more ice time, and there was not a they didn't feel that there was a need to participate in the committee. So with that being said, there are a couple of posts that remain to be filled. The other point I would just note is that in speaking with Selectman Jo Marie O'Mahony, she indicated an interest in perhaps discussing expanding the scope of this committee. So I'll certainly leave that up to Selectman O'Mahony to talk about.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
When I met with Mr. Hull, kind of to start learning about this new role, one of the things I had asked is how to bring this to discussion tonight. I do think, we obviously understand that a skating rink would serve a certain demographic of our community, and I think it's important, but I think, as I'd said previously, and we have, Yentile here tonight, we have a lot of great outdoor recreational space in town. And what I would like for us to consider is, instead of calling it the rink committee, if we would consider, and obviously I don't want to, price it out of our ability to accomplish it, an indoor recreational facility that would include a rink. So it wouldn't just be an ice rink, it would be a facility that would also potentially have, indoor basketball space or indoor batting cage spaces. I know a lot of different organizations in town are sending kids out of town in the winter months for their off-season training. And I just think to reach a broader demographic, potentially create more revenue opportunity, I'd like to see if this committee would be willing to broaden the scope so that it's not just a rink, but it would be an indoor recreation facility that could consider other possible uses along with the rink.
Mr. Chair, yeah, thank you. I would advise doing that if this committee, once formed, does actually start discussing, if the discussions lead naturally to something more, something different than just an ice hockey or an ice rink, it might be beneficial to enlarge the scope of it, so they're not either violating open meeting law by discussing things that are beyond the scope of their appointment, and also to prevent them from having to come back and then asking us to enlarge the scope of their appointment later on. So I would recommend doing that, at least at the beginning. It doesn't mean that we're going to start building all sorts of different things, but it just means that they have the authority to go explore and report back to us what might be feasible and what the costs would be.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say I do agree with my colleagues. I mean, you always want to keep all your options open, absolutely, and I think that's a great idea, and once again, you always want to keep options open, no matter what it is.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that we explore that avenue as well.
So I think we're all in agreement. I think it's a very good idea, so thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, just looking at the composition of the current committee, we do kind of hit on all areas already. I mean, at the end of the day, maybe we would need to include other youth sports organizations, but we already have kind of the recreation department, the high school, the athletic director. I know, in the interest of full disclosure, Dan Ardito is my brother, and I know he's involved in not just youth hockey, but also a lot of the other youth sports in town. So I don't know if we necessarily need to expand the scope of the committee by membership, but I just would like, at least for the initial evaluations of it, for us to look at it, or look at a space that we could add on to in the future. If a rink is all we can do right now, at least to consider the expansion possibilities in the future for other indoor space.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, just two quick things.
Sure.
I know that there's the Wilmington Skating Club is not having a representative, and I know that there is a person who's interested in serving in that capacity. His name is Mark DiGiovanni. He's a former school committee member. He's also a assistant varsity hockey coach. He's on the Hall of Fame. He's on the Wildcat Athletic Alumni and Friends, so I think he would be a good fit for this position. And in addition to that, I would like to throw my name in to serve as the representative from the Board of Selectmen. So I don't know if you want to take those two up and
Yeah, let's take up the first one if we could. First, anybody have any objections or another nominee they'd like to put up to fill the spot from that the ice skating rink has decided not to fill? Ice skating club?
I think Mark DiGiovanni, I apologize for butchering the pronunciation of your last name, but I know him to be a very intelligent, dedicated person. I would certainly support adding him to the rink committee.
Great. Any other discussion on Mr. DiGiovanni? Do you want us to take a formal vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, so, Mr. Carter, can I take that as a...
As a form of a motion, yes.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. There's a second discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter, for bringing it forward, and thank you to Mr. DiGiovanni for Wilmington to volunteer for the committee. So the second item that you brought up.
Can I make a point here, if I could?
Sure.
I understand that Mr. Carr is also interested. Maybe there could be 2 members on the board to serve on it. I did say I'd give that second speech again and again if I had to. And I see our colleague here, new colleague, and I don't know what the pleasure of the board is, but I was very interested in serving in this capacity. I don't know if you're going to be having 2 members or 1 member. I'm sure we could do whatever, obviously, because we're the Board of Selectmen. And I know you had mentioned, Mr. Chair, that you had no issue with me serving on that committee. And I know I'd like to serve on that committee. I made my point really clear, and I'd be an advocate.
Okay. So now we have 2 members interested. Anybody else interested?
Well, 3 would make a quorum, so certainly that would be, and I don't think that would be helpful, but I would certainly support having 2 members of the Board of Selectmen. I think the more responsive that this board can be to making this, or at least exploring our options on the matters of a rink and a recreation facility, I think that serves the town well. So I would certainly support both of you to serve in that capacity.
I would, through the chair, I would suggest that one serve on the committee, as 2 may pose a subcommittee, as we've talked, and may violate some meeting rules. So I think it was established with having 1 member of the Board of Selectmen on the committee, and that's the way I feel it should be.
Mr. Carr brings up a good point. Were we at risk there for any potential subcommittee?
Rules would be the same.
At this point, because it is going to be a standing committee, it would be subject to the open meeting law. So we would be posting it as such anyways, with, whether it's 1 member or 2 members or even 3 members, I suppose. The other thing I would just note is typically not that it's necessary, I suppose, but you try to have a committee that has an odd number in the event that there's any recommended votes that are made for recommendation purposes. So I guess at this point we have 6 that are designated. Mr. Mark would be 7.
Marianne Galezo will be
8.
New finance director?
Yeah, 9. And then the Board of Selectmen, so 1 member would make it 10. So I guess maybe 2 would.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessary. Again, this is an advisory board, so it's not like any items brought forward would necessarily have to have an odd number, but just a point of information, I guess.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion that 1 member of the board serve on this committee.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? I'll second that for discussion.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I see Mr. Carr is just looking to have 1 member serve on that. I showed an interest on this for quite a time. Now, what about the Intel's Farm? You have 2 members on the Board of Selectmen. What's the difference between 2 members of the Board of Selectmen serving on the Intel's Farm and 2 members serving on this committee?
Yeah, we had 2 members serving on the TIF as well, I believe. I think it's appropriate that we have 1 member serving on the board. I don't think we need 2.
I don't really have an interest in fighting over how many members of our board are going to be on a committee. I think if there are 2 folks that are capable and interested in doing so, I think put them both on and do the best work you can.
I agree with Mr. Eaton on that.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion before we vote on that? Seeing none. All in favor of Mr. Kyra's motion to just have 1 member from the Board of Selectmen represent on the rink committee, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So the motion fails. 3-2, so we're back to the original discussion of who to have as the
But
board.
I'll tell you what, I'll change my vote to go with 1 member. I'll do that. I like to, if you can make a motion to rescind that vote, I'll take the vote to go along with just 1 member. I'll do that. I'd like to rescind that.
Why don't we revote just so we can be
Okay,
clear
okay.
here? So there is, if you want to make that motion?
Yeah, make a motion to rescind that vote.
And just include one member from the
Just
board?
include one member if there's,
Okay.
yep.
Is there a second to Mr. McCoy's motion?
Sure, I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Do we still have 2 members that are interested in serving on this committee?
Yeah, I'm interested in serving on it. I've been saying it since day one.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of Mr. McCoy's motion to have one member represented on the board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's 4, all opposed? 1, motion passes. Okay, so 4 to 1, that motion passes, so now we have decided that we're gonna have one member from the Board of Selectmen represent us. And so the discussion continues on to who that person might be. We do have 2 gentlemen that have shown that they're interested. Is there any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I can say, I'd like to entertain my name as a motion to be on that committee, and I'd like to offer my name and consider that as a motion for me.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion. Mr. McCoy has a motion. Is there a second? Seeing no second, motion fails.
Make a motion that my name be considered for the position on the rink committee, or the recreational facilities / rink committee.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Kyra. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Is there discussion? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. All in favor of Mr. Kyra's motion to have him added to the rink committee, signify by saying aye. It's 4, all opposed?
I'll just abstain, that's all.
You abstain, okay. So we have 4 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. All right, thank you, Mr. Kyra, for your willingness.
Thank you for the vote.
Next on the agenda is the Town Meeting Review Committee. And you'll recall there was a desire to establish a Town Meeting Review Committee to look at changing the date of the annual town meeting, either changing it to a date earlier in the calendar year or perhaps even later, and also possibly have town meeting during a weeknight or nights. I think initially the conversation was looking at establishing a separate town meeting review committee, and which the board can certainly do. I would just point out, though, that there would be several members that, at least to this point, have expressed interest in serving on this town meeting review committee, who also are currently serving on the Inhabitant Bylaw Study Committee. There's at least 4 individuals that would be interested in serving on both. The Inhabitant Bylaw Committee, their broad scope is essentially to review all of the inhabitant bylaws, of which the town meeting date is part of. So one of the things that I would just put out there for discussion is whether the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee should essentially address this issue, and perhaps it would reduce the number of meetings that the individuals who otherwise would be on 2 committees would have to serve. I mean, I think either way it can work. It's just if there's 2 committees, then the individuals that are serving on both committees will have potentially twice as many meetings. And I did talk to the town clerk, Tina Conway, about this, just for discussion purposes, and conceivably if that was the will of the board, then she would be willing to bring this up as the first topic when the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee reconvenes, because I think the overall intent was to have recommendations back to the board by the end of the calendar year, so that to the extent there are changes that are proposed, they could be put on the warrant for town meeting in 2020.
Question about that. Have we contacted everyone in the inhabitant bylaw study committee to see if they'd be interested in expanding their scope?
Well, so I have not contacted them with respect to that point. There was a question of one of the members some time ago about who would be interested in serving on a town meeting review committee, and Mr. Oliveri expressed interest, John Bonanno expressed interest, Mr. Ardito indicated that he would be interested in just continuing to serve on the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee, and then we actually had Dan Stewart, who had been on the Bylaw Committee, that has stepped down. But there hasn't been conversation about, with the other members of the Bylaw Committee about expanding its scope.
How do we want to proceed here? We have, certainly I appreciate the recommendation. We don't want to abuse people's time here, but they've obviously shown a willingness to volunteer. We want to be sensitive to that. How do you think we should move forward?
I would defer to Mr. McCoy, since he's on the committee now, what he thinks should happen next.
Whatever the pleasure of the board is. I like to tell the town manager, to tell the town clerk, I guess what we were missing was obviously during the change of the town council. So there's some criteria that we need to get expertise from town council. I really don't see this taking more 2 or 3 meetings to get this whole thing wrapped up. I don't think this is going to be an ongoing thing through the summer, then through the fall, because most of that work was done, you know. So whatever the pleasure of the board is, I mean, I have no issue continuing serving on that board. And if we need to look for more members, whatever the decision of this board is, that's fine with me.
We have a new town clerk as well, Mr. Chair, and so there has been just some natural turnover, but the town bylaws state a lot of what has to happen with town meeting anyway, so if we can do it with the existing committee as it stands, understanding some of the members have changed, I think that's a good way to go. I would just ask that the survey that we had done last year of residents that included some feedback that I think there is a benefit to it, that be distributed. If we're going to just continue with the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee and more or less start it up again, that information is given to those individuals so that they can kind of see what the public has said already about town meeting.
Absolutely, I agree. I think, whoever is on the committee, they'll certainly take all things into consideration. That certainly will be one of them. So although I appreciate each one of these people's willingness to volunteer, I don't want to assume that they want to take on more responsibility. So I would suggest, under the recommendation of Mr. McCoy, that if only going to take a few meetings, that perhaps we hold off on this decision, reach out to each of the members, let them know what we're thinking, that we're hoping to get together with them for a few meetings before the end of the calendar year, and what the scope of the meetings might be, what the intent is. I know we have you mentioned 2 gentlemen that are not interested. Mr. Stewart's no longer interested in serving at all. Right. Mr. Ardino's doesn't seem like he's interested in serving outside the inhabited bylaws, right. The scope of the inhabited bylaws. So perhaps it's worth getting the feedback from the others as well before we proceed.
Just one other suggestion is,
sure.
I know that this is something that our current moderator has an awful lot of knowledge. He's done an awful lot of research, and he puts an awful lot of effort into conducting very fair and I think efficient town meetings. So I would recommend, if there's somebody who is stepping down from this, that our moderator replace that individual on the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee if that was not the intent.
I'm glad you raised that, because I did want to note that Rob Peterson has expressed interest in serving on the town meeting review committee. It's not clear to me, because I haven't had the exchange with him yet, whether he would be available to serve on the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee if everything was to be rolled under one umbrella, so to speak. But that I can certainly have that conversation. Just to be clear, there's really a couple of things that need to happen here. One, dealing with the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee. So when Sharon George gave her report, not at this past town meeting, but the prior town meeting, the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee had done some work on chapters, I believe, 1, 2, and 3, possibly 4, but the largest bulk of the contents are in Chapter 5, and that has not yet been reviewed. And so one of the things that the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee will need to do, regardless of what happens with the town meeting date review, is that they'll need to reconvene and discuss that section of the bylaw, consult with town council. That process had started to a limited degree with Sharon, but then essentially stopped. That'll need to happen on one track, and then potentially, if there was an interest in combining the functions, so to speak, my suggestion would be that the town meeting discussion take place first before they get into discussion about Chapter 5. Or if the intent is to have two separate committees, then it would proceed kind of on parallel tracks.
Mr. Chair? Sure. Yeah, I was under the impression that we were going to have two separate committees, one being the town committee to finish, to begin and then finish before the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee finishes their process, because you have some recommended people like Beverly Dalton and, Rob Peterson on the town meeting review committee who may not necessarily want to serve on the Inhabitant Bylaw, but so by doing the Inhabitant Bylaw, you're forcing them into something they may not want to do.
Maybe we should.
I'd almost suggest you do the town meeting review committee first, and that probably shouldn't take a long time. That was the impression I got from Mr. McCoy. And then the Inhabitant Bylaw, which I think may take a little more.
Bylaw. I didn't say the other one.
Okay, would take a quicker time.
I think the other one would be even quicker.
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't think there's, I'm not opposed to either one. I was just thinking about the prospect of the people serving on two committees having two sets of meetings to attend. But, certainly, in the instances of, as you know, I had recommended Beverly Dalton serve on the town meeting review committee, and certainly Rob Peterson has expressed interest in that, whether they could kind of be available if they were to serve on the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee, whether they could serve just for the purposes of discussing town meeting and then step down. But I don't have a particular preference. I just wanted to acknowledge the prospect of the meeting schedule.
Mr. Chairman, if I can say, I don't know if we're going to be looking at two different committees now. I thought we were going to put them all as one. That's the impression I had. I really believe it's not going to take more than 2-3 meetings on the Inhabitants Bylaw or the special town meeting review committee. I did state back then I'd be interested in serving on that, and that was my impression. So maybe we need to reach out to these individuals. If we put it all together as one, I don't see this happening more than 2 or 3 meetings. And I say this respectfully to you, Mr. Town Manager. The town clerk is going to have to get a little work done first. I understand she's busy. And the biggest thing is getting town council to guide us through some certain areas. That was the only so-called hang-up that we had at the time. But I understand we were going through different town council at the time, and I get that. So I think we should all do it as one.
Okay, I think.
Yeah, makes sense.
Why don't we, certainly all the names that I mentioned are very worthy of being on, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Dalton, no question about it. Let's reach out to everybody, let them know the crossroads that we're at, find out what their level of interest is, do they want to do both, are they just interested in one? Let's indicate to them that members have indicated it may only take 2 to 3 meetings, and our goal is to have something before the end of the calendar year. So all those intentions, and give them an opportunity to get back to us. We'll have a group of people who are interested, those who maybe are not, and we can move forward from there. How's that sound?
Will do.
Any further discussion on that? Okay.
Next under board to consider is the appointment of Diane Giambaridano to the Council for the Arts Advisory Board for a one-year term to expire April 30, 2020.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Kyra, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCoy. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Next on the board to consider is a request from Karen Campbell, Recreation Director, to use the town common and gazebo for the summer concert series on Wednesday, July 10, July 17, July 24, and July 31. Rain dates being Thursday, July 11, July 18, July 25th, and August 1st, respectively.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Eaton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Kyra. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Next, we have a request from Kristen Stokes, the residents of Jacobs Street, to have a neighborhood block party on Saturday, June 8th, 2019, from 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. We've received a similar request in years past and have not had any issues.
Okay. Is there a motion? Motioned by Mrs. O'Mahony. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Eaton. Any discussion? Hope they have a great time. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Next is a request of Julie Breen and Jennifer Cushing, co-presidents of the Friends of Field Hockey for the Wilmington High School Field Hockey, to conduct a fundraising car wash at the municipal parking lot on Sunday, September 8, 2019, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is the Swain parking area. Rain date being Sunday, September 15.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Eaton.
I'll second it, provided that there's no conflicts on that Sunday, the 8th.
It's a good question. Second by Mr. Kyra. Discussion, any conflicts?
To my knowledge, there are not. I think there was an event that we checked on as the 7th. This is the Saturday, the 7th? You're right.
Farmers Market.
No, it was it Sons of Italy or yard sale? Okay. Right.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Next under board to consider is the town council's contract for fiscal year 2020. As you recall, once the board completed its review for legal services last year, the contract was awarded to KP Law. A one-year agreement was executed. The only change to this document is that the hourly rate has gone from $195 per hour to $200 per hour. Otherwise, everything else remains the same.
Okay, is there a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
Motion made by Mr. Eaton, second by Mr. Kyra. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
We just have you guys sign this. Next, under board to consider is a contract for special counsel services for fiscal 2020. And as you recall, the element of legal services that was carved out, if you will, from the town council services was legal advice associated with the Olin Superfund site and the New England Transrail issues. And the firm that was awarded that work is Brooks and Durensis. Specifically, Dan Deutsch has been our point person now for many, many years. And the arrangement for services going forward is the same as it was previously, including their rates, the rates for Mr. Deutsch, $360 an hour. The only, and the rates for his associate, Kim Salant, would be $340 an hour. The only change is that previously, the other associate that perhaps would be involved in legal services was Lou Ross. You'll recall he was involved with the work that Deutsch Williams did for the town. His services are being replaced with a Mr. John Ruggiero. Otherwise, the contract remains the same.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton. Is the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. O'Mahony. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Final board to consider our summer meeting schedule. And I know the last time we met, we had discussed a possible change in July. Anybody have some thoughts on that?
Dear Mr. Chair, if you just bear with me as I get out my calendar.
Sure.
I have a problem coming on the 22nd of July.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
You
So-
do or you don't?
I do have a problem.
So in July, we're looking at the possibilities of the 8th, the 15th, or the 22nd? And Mr. McCoy's indicated he's got a conflict on the 22nd.
I have a conflict on the 15th.
As do I.
Two
Can we
comments.
do you have the 29th as well, which is a Monday.
Oh, excuse me, 29th?
But
Any other of those Mondays work for me, just not July 15th.
Maybe we could put it all in August's. How's that?
can you go with Tuesday?
That's fine with me
We've
also.
done Tuesdays in the past. We'll be doing a Tuesday at the end of this month.
The 16th?
That week is not good for me.
It's same for me as well.
The only hesitation I would have, if we went further than the 29th, we'd be going off more than 6 weeks. I'd hate to not meet in case something came up. I'm open to a Tuesday as well, but Mr. Hull, do you have any thoughts here from your end?
The only, I mean, my only issue comes in August, but
Okay.
in terms of July, was there availability the week of 8th? Is it possible? Did somebody say they weren't available on the 8th or 9th?
I can do the 8th.
I can do the 8th.
We could do the 8th.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so looks like July 8th. And the other proposed date was August 12th. Anybody have any problems there?
That works for me.
I'm good.
Okay, looks good. So we have, our summer meetings will be July 8th and August 12th. That work for you, Mr. Hull?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Next item is public comments. Any public comments?
Just sign these when you have a chance.
Okay. Moving on, announcements. Any members have an announcement they'd like to make?
Well, yeah,
Mr.
just,
Karen.
I guess an announcement. Just want to, once again, congratulate, I haven't done so yet publicly here, but I did the Night of the Good Guy Award on Friday, this past Friday. Mike Burns received the Good Guy Award, so I want to congratulate him on that. And also, I attended Mike Pagonis's, Chief Pagonis's retirement party. It was another great tribute to his service to the community. And just, once again, to recognize and congratulate all those individuals who were elected to serve and volunteer their time on the various boards here in Wilmington. Volunteerism is one of the cornerstones of Wilmington, and I just want to thank all those that take time to serve, that were elected or serve on a committee for the town of Wilmington. That's it.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Karen. Mr.
I'm
McCoy?
just trying to understand how we're going to do this relative to announcements. I would say the same thing. like my colleague, Mr. Kyra, I did congratulate you, the two members here, Mr. Bendel, Mr. Kyra, and Selectwoman O'Mahony back at town meeting. But I'll say publicly right here, congratulations to the winners, and I want to wish you all the best. And I did go to the Chiefs retirement party, as my colleague, Mr. Kyra, stated. But also, there's a special in my heart around the Special Olympics. On May 1st, I did go to the Special Olympics. This is the third one I've attended in a row. It has a special place in my heart for it, and it was really wonderful to see that happen. And you know, and how in Burlington they've done it. You know, in Wilmington they worked together really good, and they did a great job on that. And that's all I have for an announcement. I do want to say something under new business relative to the vote that was just taken on the rink. I don't know if I should say that now. I'd just wait.
It's up to you.
No, just real quick. I just say relative to the, I knew by me rescinding that vote, that was basically going to be the kiss of death for me on that. But I'm from old school. When you say something, you mean something. And I know publicly you mentioned you had no problem with me doing it. And I remember, Jonathan, the night of the election before the votes were tallied, I said, I hope there's going to be no razzle-dazzle. You assured me there wouldn't be. But I knew that would be the kiss of death. That's why I decided to go with the one vote. I just have to say that. I mean, I'm from old school. When you say something, you mean it, you do it. But that's me. You know, I understand. So I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Yeah, just to be clear, I had no problem at the time, but I had no idea that Mr. Kyra was interested, so now that I do,
Just
vote for Mr. Kyra.
Okay, no problem. That's great. No problem. Thank you.
Any other announcements?
Yeah, no, I'll just respond to what was said. So I don't think that we're serving the community well if we're going to be arguing over who's on a committee and who isn't. I think we spend far too much time today just talking about who's going to be on committees, and it just delays the committees, the respective committees, from actually getting down the work. So I was on. I fully supported having two members be on that committee. I don't understand why we need to nitpick how many members of a Board of Selectmen are going to be on a committee. To me, that doesn't really serve anybody. So I certainly could be criticized for how I vote. It's not going to be the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last time. But to me, this board has identified a need that the community wants to pursue. There's interest on the board to get involved with that. I think that's admirable. Just get on with it rather than having arguments over who's going to be the representative of the board. If there's two members that are interested, I think go for it. If we're going to be saying, well, it can only be one, that means to the exclusion of an individual. I don't think that serves us at all. So I'll just explain my vote that way.
Just a couple of things.
Sure.
Under the important dates, I wanted to correct that the trivia night for Rotary is actually June 14th. It's not the 7th anymore. I also wanted to note that the Rotary's Ice Bucket Challenge is August 17th, supporting the Angel Fund. I will be challenging all of you as my colleagues to join me at that. And I did want to also just comment to Mr. McCoy. I'm all about collaboration, and I'm all about cooperation. I did not second the motion for Mr. Kyra to only have one member when I knew two members were interested. We were one vote away from two members being on that rank committee, and you rescinded that. And that's why I voted for Mr. Kyra, because I'm not about division. I'm not going to support division. It's not my modus operandi. So had you not rescinded it and wanted one vote, you would have both been on the rank committee as we sit here now, I believe.
Okay. All right. Any other announcements? Okay. We're on to new business. Any new business? Okay. Seeing none, we're on to important dates. Mr. Hull.
Can you just sign this?
Oh, sure.
So important dates. We have the Pan Mass Challenge Kids Bike Ride, Carter Lane, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. May 27th, Memorial Day Parade, 10 a.m. Ceremony at Wildwood Cemetery, 11 a.m. Town offices will be closed. So we'll pass these down to groups here. On May 31st through June 1st, Council for the Arts 39th Annual Art Exhibition, Friday 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., Saturday 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. June 1st, Fishing Derby, Town Beach, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. June 2nd, Wilmington High School graduation. June 5th, Brush Drop-Off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. June 6th, Shawsheen Tech graduation. June 7th, June 14th, Rotary Trivia Night, Knights of Columbus. June 8th, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. June 8th, townwide yard sale, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. June 8th, the town beach opens. June 9th, Herndon Tavern Open House, 430 Salem Street, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Also on June 9th, Brady Foundation 5K for Recovery, Town Common, 9 a.m. Selectmen's Meeting on June 10th, 7 p.m. here. And then June 14th through the 15th is the Wilmington Relay for Life, Wilmington High School, Friday afternoon, June 14th through Saturday morning, June 15th. Farmers Market, Town Common Parking Lot, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. beginning on June 16th.
And just one last one. We're back here on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, which is the
Yes.
15th, for interviews for the new finance director position at 7 p.m. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Excuse me, 6:15. I apologize. 6:15 on Wednesday. Very good. Okay, with that, is there a
So
motion to
moved.
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Kyra.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. O'Mahony down the end. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Good night, everyone.